Hey guys, so today is gonna be one of my conversational videos. I've been playing a lot. Okay, so I love Persona. This is gonna be about grief in the Persona 3 game. I think it's very prevalent in Persona 3, even though things happen in 4 and 5 that are tragic, but 3 really, each character in Persona 3 deals with some type of, grief, some type of um, situation where, they have to go through the levels or the levels of grief, pretty much. I think this is why I don't always suggest Persona 3 as the first Persona game that you do play. I do feel like if you like a mix of light and dark, like Persona 5 is like the sweet spot. If you're more into it being pretty light with like a few dark things, Persona 4. But Persona 3 really has the player staying with this grief. And the characters are always dealing with some type of like level of grief that like they're probably never gonna get over. And I want to start with like just kind of the main theme. Like it's blue. So blue is obviously sadness. Their evoker is a gun. Like if you've seen footage of anybody playing this game, like it's very, very disturbing. And I think the old artwork, not saying that the new game, is Persona 3 Reloaded, I had to think about that, doesn't do a good job, but I think what the old art style, because I played Persona 3 Portable, and then I played Reloaded, and then I played The Answer. So just to give you guys an idea of kind of where I'm coming from when it comes to the storyline, I've played something of the original, one of the three, and then I've played the new game with The Answer. So when it comes to like this grief that all these characters, it's consumed. And then there's things that happen throughout the game, and this is going to be full of spoilers because I cannot talk about the grief of the main cast without talking about the spoilers. I'm not going to get into the confidants. There's some really sad confidants. There's the man that's dying from a internal illness, chronic illness. That's really sad. But I'm not going to talk about that too much. I think if this video does well, I might go deeper into it. But right now, I'm just talking about the main cast. So, you play as a silent protagonist. You can pick their name. My name for him is going to be just the protagonist. I've called him other things. Makoto Yuki is his, I guess, name for canon. So Makoto, he had experienced his parents' death at a very young age. They get in a car accident, and he is now sent to this weird school, has to move into this dorm, and when he enters, like, you know he's in some type of alternative universe because there's like caskets like all over town, and this is in like 2-3 seconds of the game, so we don't even know yet that like personas exist or anything. We are just, hi Makoto, like we're walking through town with all these caskets, and then you know he kind of questions it, but not very much. And then he gets to his dorm finally, and then this little kid comes up, and he's in this like jail suit. Um so and then you're told to sign the contract, and then these two girls, which is Mitsuru and Yukari, come out, and they have guns strapped to their thighs, and he's like, that's kind of weird. What's going on with that? Or you can ignore it, but I usually what's with that? And then they come up with some excuse. Um and so you're already as a player already have this tone set that it's going to be a very dark game. Like if if it was anything else but a dark game, I don't know what to tell these people. Because it's not a friendly game. And why, I just don't want my camera to die, guys, so give me 1 second here. Are we back? Okay, I think we're back. Okay, so you have this attitude already coming into the game. I think in some ways, like, I was starting to make predictions, like, right when I was starting the game, like, what's going on. And that's what's really cool about Persona games, is that they are very good about, like, giving you time to kind of digest everything, and kind of, there's always kind of some type of mystery when it comes to all of this. And I think that's what I love about Persona games, is that they give you the time. Because I feel like some games, like, they just are like, oh, here's everything that you need to know. And that's fine for a lot of things. I think, like, even JRPGs, I think, do a really good job of this. And then Expedition 33, fantastic game. Chef's Kiss does this very well too. I'm gonna definitely talk about that in another video. But you go through, like, life as a student, and you can feel like this, like, darkness, like, kind of overall, like, the town and the characters. And then it's like you can't go out at night and this and that, and it's very like haunting. And then you start to really get to know the characters. So I'm gonna start with Yukari. And I think Yukari is interesting because of the fact of why she joined SEES. Their little group of Persona users. I can't remember what their name is right now. So you find out pretty lightly into the game. So after we have a boss encounter, our first boss encounter, you you find that Yukari comes and sees the protagonist, Makoto, and she tells him that I understand you. I looked at your file. My father died too in an accident. Um and um you find that out really pretty much like into her first, like, she shows you around the school and then she confesses this. So, like, obviously you're like, okay, well, what's up with that? Um and I think there's like a thing about it. We don't really get into her mother too much when it comes to um until we get into her confidant. But basically, what you're getting at is her mother's kind of moved on from her father, and Yukari's kind of the only one that's like, I need to dig deeper into this situation. And like lasting into that grief, and I think there's like this sad like realization that Mitsuru and the company that Mitsuru has, which is responsible of Seas and the battling of personas and stuff like that, that this whole company was involved in creating the Dark Hour. And when Yukari kind of figures that out, like, there's this kind of, you go from, you know, like sad and grief to anger when you find this out. And I think that's a common theme in grief where we do not go straight to acceptance. Like, it takes a while when we're grieving over somebody, especially somebody as close as a parent, a guardian, something like that, is we do not jump to acceptance. Like, we go back and forth through the levels of grief until like one day you take a deep breath and you're finally like, I accept that you're gone. I will remember you, but I will not have this like control my life. And that's something that it takes a very long time for a lot of people. And I think Yukari was just like so consumed over, like, why did my dad die? Like, what happened? And it's not a financial thing, because you the way that her mother kind of acts, especially when we kind of get to the portion of Yukari's confidant, like, you kind of get that they have money. So it's like, not money is like not a big issue. It doesn't seem like. So they're not like trying to sue them or anything like that, but I can understand like the realization. I am not a big fan of Yukari to begin with. And I think like by the time we get to the answer, she gets to the point where like her selfishness is coming out. Um and what she chooses and everything. Um and I'll talk a little bit about like kind of the ending and the answer in a minute, but um I kind of just want to go through these characters real quick. So we have Akihiko and Shinji. I'm going to talk about them together because their grief is kind of in the same ballpark. They had a little, so what happened was Akihiko and Shinji are orphans. They were in the same orphanage, and something happens to this girl, which is Akihiko's sister, little sister, and Shinji, I'm gonna bring kind of Ken into this now, kills Ken's mother by accident. It's during the dark hour. He's going after a persona, and she is caught in the middle of it. And so you have this kind of triangle um, of hate with the fact that Ken wants to kill Shinji for killing his mother. And then you have Akihiko kind of in the middle of it because of what he experienced with his little sister and the fact that they have been orphans. Like, he's really close to Shinji. But you find out, and this is something that's not very clear. You have to play the game a couple times or like listen to the storyline. Like, Shinji's dying pretty much. And I think that is really reflective of his persona. I think he has the most reflective persona with the persona powers out of any of the group, in my opinion, because of the fact that it is based off of the fact of how much damage he can take the more powerful he's getting. So it's just this whole idea of this kind of self-harm, like self-abuse that you afflict on yourself to make yourself more powerful and more important to the group as a whole, if we are looking at the symbolism of his persona itself. And you find out, like, he's been taking this drug to suppress his persona, and it's slowly killing him. So, and, like, it's represented so well in his persona. Now, when we get to the point that, we have the scene with Ken and Shinji. Ken is eventually going to, like, he has a weapon to kill Shinji, and Shinji's like, you can do this, but it's going to tear you apart. You're not going to be the same human being. Your mother probably would not want this. And then he gets shot by a member of, oh my goodness, I have a list, guys, of how can he not be in here? I'm gonna call him Jesus Guy until I can find a I don't know. I don't know why he's not there. But he finally gets shot, and this is the first time that the whole group has to grieve together. And I think it really does change the dynamic between the characters, because I think, and you as a player really, like, Shinji is not like this bad guy. And I think that's something that the player has to deal with when we're continuing the story without Shinji, but Ken is still alive. And, like, the problem with this, like, on a normal basis, and something that I think they forgive Ken so fast. And I get that Ken is a child, okay? Ken is, like, in middle school, like, late elementary, early middle school. Like, he is a child. He's not like the rest of C's where they have, gone through other things of grief and dealt with it, and they're more of an adult. So, like, you're talking mostly, like, I think Shinji, Mitsuru, and Akihiko, like they're in their like late teens, like they're pretty much like more closer to 20, and then the protagonist and Yukari are like 16 years old. So, and they've experienced a lot of grief already. Like these are not like your normal teenagers that have not experienced everything, that are very sheltered. Like they have experienced so much in their little lifespan. So that's just something that I think we as, you know, a watcher, our understanding is that you are you are kind of, you know, working with. So I think that's something too that we have to consider when we are working with like grief, is just getting to that acceptance level. And then we have Mitsuru. And Mitsuru is kind of an interesting character because she's kind of all over the place with kind of where she aligns with everything, because she is in some ways like kind of the main cause of like all this happening. Her family kind of is too, because her family is, you know, created the Dark Hour. Yukari's dad was involved in this, and then it's like she's brought in Akihiko, Shinji into this fold at a very young age, and it causes a lot of damage. Now, does this make Mitsuru a bad person? Not really, and it doesn't really make her dad a bad person either. You think that her dad is a bad person the way she talks about him, but then by the time you meet him, it's like, no, it's just like she's very protective over him in like a really weird way that I still don't really understand. I think it's like she got her power so young, so it's like she got like really protective, and she's like, I can protect my father with this power, and then he gets murdered um in Mementos, not Mementos, the Dark Hour. And I think that is something that is kind of, it's it's like this whole like kind of an eye for an eye thing, if you, in a very light way, because like you have Yukari's father die because of the Dark Hour, and then you have Mitsuru's father die because of the Dark Hour. So it's like this intense like need and want to get rid of this thing that keeps on hurting everybody around our main group. Which I don't think a lot of other Persona games have done. Persona 5 does deal with a lot of darker topics. Grief is not, grief is in like one area, but it's not like the main, where it's like the Dark Hour just represents this overall grief of this whole entire town and everything they've lost. Um, and that's the whole thing of, you know, we deal with loss in a lot of different ways. Like, you know, I'm surprised like so many people in this town have not moved out. Because then we have the dog. And his story is really sad just because his owner dies. It's kind of like, you know, the dog sitting waiting for his owner to come home, the owner never comes home, that type of story. And then I think like he has another purpose. So he's like, I'll join Seeds. He doesn't talk. And I think that's something very important that I want to talk about is having a animal companion in a Persona game that does not talk. It makes it a lot darker because Morgana in Persona 5 and Teddy in Persona 4 are these kind of comic relief characters. And I think having that makes the game already a lot lighter. Um because having not having that and having um Junpei as the comic relief makes it a lot darker because once Junpei loses his girl, which is Chashiki. No, I don't think her name. It's not that. This is a better website. Okay, student. Shidori. Once he loses Shidori, all bets are kind of off the table. Um, and Shidori is like this representation of just like the overall grief that she feels. Like, and Jinpei gives her some reason to kind of live, and but when she dies, it's like now he doesn't have a reason to live. And I think and I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic is like I think Shindori is kind of his bright light. I don't think Jinpei is as happy as he comes out as. I think there's definitely like a lot of depression. He doesn't do well in school and he's kind of considered the failure and that really gets him down a lot. So it's not like when I say like he is the sunshine of the group and he's the comic relief, it's kind of like that typical kind of like you're the happiest person in the room, but there's like a very dark, underlining thing about you. And you use humor as a defense mechanism, and that's exactly what it is. So once he loses Shidori, it becomes like his whole personality becomes that deep darkness that he faces. And I don't think like the younger so everybody outside of kind of Mitsuru, Ken, Akihiko, when Shinji dies, like it's sad, but I don't think they absorb it. Um and I think the whole thing with Mitsuru, like with Shinji trying to get him back into school, like you can have a life outside of this whole dark hour persona situation. Like there is a story for you once move on. And once we get, we destroy the dark hour, like it's such a positive thing about destroying the dark hour until I think they don't understand like what that means until like the end of the game, which I will get to in a minute. Um, but I kind of wanted to talk about Fuka for a minute. Um, Fuka is just like she's just bullied. And then she gets trapped into this dark hour and how this girl survives the dark hour, I am not sure. Um, they said like she's in there for like 3 days. Now the dark hour works differently, so maybe she's not in there. as long, but um she's not in there as long. So being consumed in that amount of darkness for however long, like that had to like cause her extreme anxiety and stuff. And her confidant is very much about her learning to cook. Like she's like, I'm not a confident cook, and like like finding her way to be female. Because she's like more of like kind of like an adventurer, and she's like, that's not very girl like nobody's gonna want to like marry me, like that type of typical story. So a lot of it's about cooking and the protagonist helping her on her way to learn how to cook. And it's it's very interesting. It's a very interesting dynamic with her, and then her realizing that it's okay to be, herself. And I think the protagonist and the person watching her loves that about her. Like loves that she wants to be part of the group. And I think she doesn't feel like, I think based off of her dialogue, she doesn't feel like just being the navigator is a very important role and stuff like that. But, you know, it's a very important role. She does a lot of buffs. Like, I think she's one of the best navigators right now with the remake. Like, sorry guys, she's got you. But there is a lot of just putting oneself down that I think Fuka is constantly in. Koromaru's the dog, by the way. And then we have Aegis. And to me, Aegis, a lot of her grief comes from the end of the game and Answer. She is the protector of the protagonist. So if you pick the quote unquote good ending, which in this game there's not really like a good ending, there's just kind of the right ending. The protagonist dies. Either all of you die or just the protagonist. Sorry, guys. And Aegis is like, I think you see her grief because she could not save the protagonist. And I think some of it should have been her kind of feeling. And she's there at his last moments. And she's the only one that sees him at the end of, and remembers and everything. And she has to watch somebody that she truly cares about, if not love, die in like a very slow, painful way. Because they made a oath that they would be there at the graduation. He does make it, but nobody else remembers him. Like, everybody's like, you're really sickly looking and this and that, but they don't remember until he finally disappears. Minus Aegis. So when we get to the Answer, she is consumed with her grief of that and is pretty much like, send me back to the island. I don't want to be, I don't deserve the happiness. And the Answer is the personification of the grief that all of them feel. They make the hole in the ground and you see, and the choice is, we can either move forward with our lives or we can bring the protagonist back. And I think the right decision was made here. But they had to get to it. And I understand when it comes to grief, you want to bring that person back. That's like the obsession that like I think a lot of us experience when it comes to our grief and everything. We want to bring that person back no matter what. And that's the kind of the very dark side of necromancy that is really interesting in a lot of stories that are like this. Like, how do people come back? And I think it's really important in this that they did not bring him back. Like, they let him make that decision again to become the protector, to keep Nyx at bay. Um, and I love that it's Nyx because Nyx is the one of the more powerful goddesses, and she is the goddess of pretty much like this death and destruction and the end of the world. So it's so if you look at like all the like if you take every persona and find their origin, like it's really interesting, and we could probably get deeper into that. People already have. But I just in the answer taking the protagonist's power. I think it's her way of accepting. I think in a weird way, like she's close to the protagonist, closer than ever, having his power, understanding that now she's the leader, like she has to make choices. She is at that acceptance level, and I understand that, you know, and then her sister, sorry guys, Matis is like a personification of what she used to be. Because at the end, you're playing with these characters, and then at the end, like, she disappears because Aegis has finally accepted her situation, and she decides to go back to school, and it's like kind of the answer gives it a happy ending. The good ending or the correct ending gives it a sad ending. And there is not a lot, like, if you just played Persona 3 or Persona 3 Reloaded without the answer, I would say that's still acceptable ending. I don't really care. Like, when I finished Persona 3, I was like, what can the answer give me that what can the answer give me that Persona 3 hasn't? And it's just the answer. Like, that's probably why it's called the answer, because it's like the answer of why he did what he did. And that's just the whole thing about the whole situation, is that there's questions, and there's you know, and I still feel like there's questions. And like, and this is like from Persona 3, 4, and 5, like, what is the Velvet Room? What is, you know, Igor? And I don't know, like, I've never played Persona 1 and 2. I don't know anything about Persona 1 and 2. I know, like, kind of basic things. But, like, that's never been answered either. So it's like, we don't really need the answer. Like, and that could be, like, a very controversial opinion. I think to me, like, the answer was just like a major boss rush, and play wise, I was good after Persona 3 having to play the answer, and, you know, and everything. I don't know. And I don't know, like, how that came to be, like, why they added it. Because this is, to me, the first Persona game that, you know, came like 3 versions. This was the start of all that. Persona 4 only has 2. And I'm not talking spin-off titles. I'm talking like mainline, and then, you know, and I'm not talking about the remakes either. Like, you know, the remake we're gonna get for 4, so technically 4 is gonna have 3 versions, and Persona 3 is up to 4. Um, so that's just the whole thing um of this whole situation is that, you know, this story is surrounded by grief. And I think with having it surrounded by grief, this was the first technically Shin Megami Tensei game with the social links. And Shin Megami Tensei, I've played their games, it's very, very dark. So to kind of escape the darkness in Persona 4 was a shift in, this is a Persona, like the difference between like Shin Megami Tensei and Persona. I think with having Persona 4 as this bright sunshine yellow, very disco-y, very happy, minus the murder mystery, and that kind of separated this whole conversation, where Persona 3 is like the last game that really is consumed in that darkness that Shin Megami Tensei is really known for. And Persona 3 so far is my favorite Persona game. And I think it's because I, in some ways, can relate to these characters on a level that, you know, I've experienced my own grief. Like, I know, like, how much it consumes and this and that. So, when you're, like, looking at a game where it's all about the grief and you've been there, like, it's definitely this idea that you can relate to. Persona 5 and this whole idea of, like, oh, let's destroy the bad adults that are, you know, corrupting and everything. I can relate to characters, but I can't relate to their full concept. Where with the Dark Hour and with how much they've lost because of the Dark Hour, like, I can relate to that more, and I can relate to the destruction of it more. Um and Persona 4, like, I haven't played Persona 4 yet. I've seen the anime, and I don't think it's a good reputation of what that story is. Because I can tell you I've read and watched the anime manga of Persona 5, and it's not a good reputation. But anyway, thank you for coming. I've been thinking a lot about this, and I think it's because of Expedition 33, which I will eventually get into kind of more like that. But I'm really comfortable with the Persona, like, series. I've played the games fully twice now. And I'm gonna probably play another playthrough. So there's probably gonna be more Persona content. Especially getting to waiting for Persona 4, that remake. Because I do want to play Golden. I know it's probably gonna be hard being a new Persona player playing Golden, but I want to give it a try. But otherwise, like, list your favorite Persona game in the comments. Like, if you have a favorite Persona game, or like a moon emoji, just to say you're here. Otherwise, I hope you have a good one, and I will see you in a video coming real soon. Bye!